gave me the tools to survive.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Community Collective's number 12 meetup on the topic of community platforms and tech tools with Eleanor Smith, the program lead at Hex and founder of Neuro Studio. Hey, Elle, give us a big wave.
Oh my God. Hey, Paz. So happy to be here.
We're excited to have you here. And if I haven't had the pleasure of meeting everyone on the call today, my name is Paz Pazarski, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Community Collective alongside Melia Rayner at Blackbird Ventures and Jala Alex at Thriday, and a lot of ambassadors who have also just joined us and the team as well, who I'll introduce you to shortly. And so before we kick off our meetup today, I'm tuning in from the land of the Wadawurrung people. I am based in Torquay in regional Victoria, and I would love to acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging, and also extend that respect to wherever you may be tuning in from today. We'd actually love for you to post in the chat and say hello and where you're based at the moment, whether you know the traditional owners or just the name of the city and town that you are located in. And we are now in September, so welcome to spring if you are in the Southern Hemisphere. As I said, this is our 12th meetup, and we've been running meetups since June 2021. If this is the first time you are attending a meetup, the Community Collective exists to serve community builders across the Australian and New Zealand startup space. What started as a meetup group for 17 community builders in between the 4th and 5th Melbourne lockdowns during the pandemic at the Commons in Cremorne, we brought together community builders to basically talk about how hard it is to build community. And it turns out that there was, a really, really great energy in the room. And quickly, this community grew exponentially across Australia and New Zealand, the majority of people finding us through referrals. And 12 months on, I actually quit my job, my full-time role at Startup Victoria three months ago now, to go full-time into building this community and creating more impact for people like yourselves. So it's very exciting. And also, if you have never been to this virtual land before, we are in Butter, not the dairy version, but the tech tool version. So Butter is actually a tool that Elle introduced me to. And I just want to give a quick how-to on Butter because some people have never actually used Butter before. So if you've never used Butter, you can find the chat on the left, and you can also push the shortcut C on your keyboard, and this will bring up the chat. And hello everyone from in the chat. We've got people from Northern Beaches, Melbourne, from Wurundjeri Land, Sydney and Christchurch. Okay, a big welcome to everyone. So here you found the chat, which is great. And you can also see the emojis on the left if you go to reactions. And if everyone can push a number between 0 and 9, you'll be able to see that this gives us live reactions. So you can use these during the talk today to actually let us know how this content is landing with you. Of course, if you're in the recording world and watching this in the future, you can just give a thumbs up to the screen. My personal favorite element of Butter is when you click N on your keyboard. This brings up private notes. So you could type away how amazing Eleanor is, and then no one will be able to see this. And then you can email this to yourself at the end of the session, or copy and paste if you don't know how to do that. Jack tuning in from Perth, welcome. I hope it's sunny where you are. And a personal favorite of Butter, which actually I only have the power to do, is this soundboard. So we've disabled it for everyone else just because you could imagine how distracting that could be. But just to give you a bit of an idea, we hope there's no crickets today because we want to make sure it's engaging and fun. Last thing, there's the queue. So when we go to audience Q&A, you can push the number 2, and this will say that you have a question, and then we can give you the mic. You can jump off mute and ask your question live or post in the chat. So how today is going to run, in a moment, we're going to do a check-in. I'll explain what a check-in is. And then we're going to dive into some moderated Q&A between Eleanor and I on the topic of community platforms, and tech tools. This has been a really requested topic because all community builders at the moment need some sort of technology stack to support their role and the community. Whether you're building a member portal and you need an all-inclusive element to have a member directory and connect your members, or just some automation tools that help make your life a little bit easier. Then we'll have some audience Q&A with Eleanor, and then we'll wrap up with some community announcements. I've got 2 gifts to give to everyone today that's been passed on to share with the CC community. And then at 1 o'clock, we have an optional session at the end where you can stay on and connect one-on-one with other members in small groups and talk about what you've learned. Or if you got to run and duck off, you're welcome to leave at 1 o'clock at that point. We will be recording this session as well for those that couldn't make us join us live. And last thing from me before we dive into the check-in is the CC House rules. So can I just get a hands up if whose first meetup is this? Anyone just give a reaction, number 1, if this is your first meetup. Okay, whoa, we've got a lot of first meetup people here. Well, welcome to our meetup. We're really excited for you to be here. We have a few CC House rules at our meetups. So the first CC House rule is that this is a safe and supportive space. So showing up here means that you agree to being kind and respectful for everyone here, and that no question is a dumb question, and we are all here to learn, connect, and support each other. So the other last thing, we are open and honest with each other, and this is a session for you to receive and learn. So please shut down all your other tabs and phones and things going on and give us your full attention. And then you can also be active and participate and ask questions to actually get the answers that you are looking for. All right, we're going to jump into our check-in. So you're going to see a poll here, and you'll be able to click 0 to 4. So on a scale of 0 to 4, how happy are you with your tech stack at the moment? What we mean by tech stack, how happy are you with the tools that you are using to manage your community? So whether it's CRMs, MailChimp, Butter, Zoom, Asana, GoDaddy for website building, let us know how happy you are with your current tech stack. So basically you click the number and then you click submit, and then that will be an anonymous answer and we'll be able to understand where you're at. Okay, so we've got some votes coming in. So we've got one person who's super happy. Okay, whoever that is, you're going to run the session today because you are, no, I'm kidding. So we've got one person who's super happy. That's awesome. We've got a few people sitting at 3 out of 4, which is great. And a lot of people at 2, so it's okay. And we've got a couple people at 1, so not that happy. And we don't have any people who aren't very, very, very sad with their tech stack. So, all right, the vibe of the room is it's okay. So there's some room for improvement here, which is great. Okay, last question from us on our check-in is what are your 3 favorite tech tools at the moment? So the parts where you are really happy about, please type your answer here and let us know in this word cloud what your 3 favorite tech tools for community building are. So you can add as many answers as you like. My favorite at the moment, which I'll share, is Airtable. We've literally built the entire back end of the Community Collective on Airtable. We use this for automations, emails, CRM, full tracking, application review. So it really is our end-to-end system for that. Another one I'll share is Beehive, and that is for writing and sending newsletters. It's like Substack, but different. All right, we've got some tools coming in. So we've got Salesforce, there's Klaviyo, Notion, Slack, of course. Some people are using Circle and Plus. I've never heard of Plus. If someone could share the link in the chat for everyone, that would be awesome. We've got Trello, great for project management. LinkedIn, 100%. And at the end of this meetup, we'll basically collate all of these resources and we'll send a link out in the post meetup EDM. So basically we can build a collective resource database with all of these tools. So I'll basically end the check-in there. So this really gives us a good snapshot of where everyone's feeling with their tech stack and then the kind of knowledge. So Elle, I hope that also gives you a bit of a snapshot of where everyone's at.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm loving seeing like the live updates on the responses and stuff. Is that that must be a new feature on Butter because I haven't used that one before. It's awesome.
It is a new
Um,
feature.
Yeah, that's also one of the things that I love about Butter as a platform for engagement is that they're run really intelligently. Like they're just sometimes you engage with a startup and you're like, I don't know if they've got all the features just yet, but like they seem to be making really good choices on what they add in, and Butter absolutely falls into that category. Like I'm a massive fan.
100%.
Um, yeah.
The last thing is, okay, so that's the end of our check-in. That this is really to give a voice to everyone before we dive in. So we're going to end this poll. And now I have the absolute pleasure of actually introducing you officially to Elle. So Elle and I actually connected with each other at RMIT Activator many years ago when I was working there, and she was in the co-working space, and we crossed paths through the RMIT world. And since then, Elle has actually a background in education, performing arts, sales, and publishing. And during the pandemic, she actually led the digital transformation of Hex, which is we've got a few members on the call here from Hex, and they provide really amazing education and innovative solutions for a lot of young people and students. And really, Elle was quite pivotal in launching the Hex World online community. And so now she actually implements and facilitates lots of different Hex programs in innovation and entrepreneurship. She's also interviewed a few Nobel Prize winners and a Grammy nominee. She ran an international online hackathon and built the Hexperimental communities on Circle, Slack, Discord, and Topia, which I learned about the other week. And it's also a very special week for Elle because yesterday she actually launched her very own community. So she's the founder of Neuro Studio, which is a community and newsletter for experienced designers and supporters of neurodiversity in learning and workplaces. So Elle, I'm so proud of you, and you are a true example of a great community builder in Australia. And so, can we just kick off this Q&A? Can you just add a little bit more color and tell us a bit more about your background and career to date?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, firstly, I thank you so much for that intro. That was absolutely awesome. And it's great to see everyone in the room who's interested in community building because it's like what life is all about, isn't it? And it's like, I feel like in the last few years, we've suddenly moved to this idea of digital community building because we've had to, and we hadn't maybe had to think of it so much before. And now it's like this really big thing that we want to do better at, which is awesome. So it's really exciting to see. So my background is all over the place. One of the reasons why I've founded Neuro Studio is because, like a lot of people during the pandemic, I was like, why are some of these things so much harder for me than they seem to be to other people around me, like just the little things. And so I've recently been diagnosed with ADHD, and I have other members of my family who have had it forever and who have recently had diagnoses and things like that. And it's like, okay, so there are things that we can do better. There are things that we can do better from an experience perspective for people in the places where they spend their most time, which is their learning and workplaces, right? And, it's been such a privilege to work in an organization like Hex, where, one of our core purposes is to actually make innovation education fun, because the engagement is actually how you get the information and the learning in people's minds. So as happens to me a lot, I'll probably forget what the start of my sentence is by the time that I get to the end of it. But that's why Neuro Studio has launched yesterday, and it's designed as a community, partly because obviously that's where my personal experience is, but because collaboration is where it's all at as far as I'm concerned. It's like there are too many things in this world where one or a very small group of people get to make the decision on what needs to change. And I figure if we start with conversation and a little bit community collective, make it a really safe space, then that's a pretty good, foundation to move from.
100%. And I think, you've really hit on a need with NeuroStudio and a niche as well, which is really great foundation for building a community. And so, Elle, today's topic is all about platforms and tech tools. And so just for a bit of framing, could you dive into a bit about what role do platforms and tech tools actually play in the world of community building?
Yeah, okay, that's really interesting. I mean, like as I was saying, so in the when I started at Hex, it was just before the pandemic hit. I'd been on a Hex program, and I knew that like community is like a fundamental part of what we do, because there's obviously teaching people how to network and to utilize their communities and build cultural capital, for example, is a huge part of actually the learning in startup world, as I'm sure you guys all know. And so when I came on board to work in community, it was intended to be a very face-to-face kind of role. It was, meant to be putting on events, and like, yeah, we had a Facebook group, and I was like connecting with everybody in Facebook Messenger and things like that, and literally like calling people up on the phone. We were going to go to South by Southwest, which was cancelled a few days before the whole thing was meant to be on a trade mission with the Victorian government. And we were calling up Hexies to say, hey, do you want to come with us on this really cool opportunity where you can like learn from scale ups on this trade mission? So that was just pre-pandemic what community looked like at Hex. And then, as I say, this trade mission was cancelled a few days before we were meant to be flying out, which was absolutely devastating. And as a business that generated all of our revenue from international travel at the time, we had like we had a serious day of reflection on, can we keep doing this? What's the world going to look like in a few weeks, let alone for the foreseeable future? And anyway, so long story short, we made some big changes to the business, but we also at that time reached out to some of our community members. We'd already been using Zoom for ages because we're a remote team anyway. And we were just finding out how everyone else was feeling, because that was kind of core to our DNA as a business. And so from that perspective, kind of the online community events started a bit organically, because there was just such a desire to connect and find out how we were all managing under the circumstances. But from a tech stack perspective, it was just as simple as, like this, being on a video conferencing call. And obviously pretty quickly everyone else got the hang of the video conferencing calls, and then we start having amazing tech like Butter, where they're actually trying to improve the engagement and the experience on the calls rather than just making it all about business. So in terms of like the tech stack, the other thing that's really core to our DNA at Hex is experimenting and using real world tech tools so that we can help our kind of aspiring and early stage founders to know some of the things that they can actually build with, like regardless of whether they are coders, tech people, that kind of thing, because we're a multidisciplinary business. Our students are come from lots of disciplines. And so that was, again, a really core offering to what we do, is we're always experimenting with new, like particularly startups that are up and coming. We love reaching out to other startup founders and seeing what sorts of decisions are going into how they're developing their tech stack, and how we might connect the dots. So I think is actually a lot to do with what community is about as well. It's about connecting the dots. So it's kind of like reflecting what we do as people with the tech side. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. I'm sorry. I might be a bit of a rambler.
No, this is perfect rambling. It's all hitting the nail on the mark, Elle, because, really what you've explained is how technology have helped you pivot options and offerings at Hex. And I remember that point, especially at the start of the pandemic. Like pre-pandemic, Hex were running multiple programs all around the world, Singapore, all these different locations, and it was really about travel and in person. And what I think you and the team did really well were quickly pivot, research, and find a lot of the platforms and tech tools and understand how they can help you build programs, but also still connect everyone.
Yeah.
And really, in this world of like the role of technology and community building, is I see it in two parts. One is it's helping you connect members, it's helping you build community, it's helping people get to the value and the resources that they need. And then on the flip side, it's actually the tools that help us do our jobs. It's about productivity, being efficient, reducing workload, automating manual tasks, being able to put everything in Asana so you have everything out of your head and into a plan. And so, really thinking about, I guess, like how Hex has used tools. Like, could you give us a bit of a sneak peek into what tools you're currently using to manage the Hex community? And perhaps there's like any challenges or superpowers that you've come up against. Obviously, we're not going to name blame specific tools, but just keen to hear your perspective.
Oh no, I'm not. I think that all of the tools have like amazing strengths and challenges associated with them, and the way to pick your tech stack is to really have an idea of what those strengths and challenges are and what's relevant to your business in order to choose them. Like, I can tell you what I like for our tech stack, or what I'm choosing for my own tech stack for NeuroStudio, but that could still be not the right thing for your business because you'll have different requirements. So for example, the reason why we started using Butter as a video conferencing platform was because you can directly use YouTube links in it. So when we're doing pitch competitions, for example, that are video submissions, we could stream them live in the video conference and it wouldn't have lag. So the same way that if you're uploading things or sharing screen through Zoom does. But at the same time, then there are other things that Zoom's really amazing for as video conferencing tech goes. But in terms of community tech, I mean, we, right back from when I did my own Hex program in 2019, we're using Slack for direct comms. So, and at the time, like, I think I'd maybe used Slack once for a hackathon as part of my computer science degree that I was doing at the time, but had never heard of it otherwise, and it wasn't everywhere like it is now. But that was part of the whole using real world tech concept. And it's still to this day what we use for cohorts to communicate with each other directly. Although it's still, like, to be really frank, it's still interesting to see that whilst when I started using Slack in 2019, it was brand new, and therefore it was like amazing as a comparison to what had come before. And it really built a sense of cohort and community within that group. And it's still going to this day as the kind of alumni direct communications for Hex. We did notice, for example, at our recent Singapore program, that the cohort, without any like direction from Hex on this matter, like we'd set up all the Slack stuff, they actually started communicating with each other in Facebook Messenger. So it's like sometimes people will go where they want to go, where there's like kind of a drive for a group to go, and you have to work with that. Like, there's no point trying to like dictate terms to a group of people, to a community. You can create facilities, and you can try to encourage people to see the value in what it is that you're offering. But ultimately, there are going to be reasons why they're using some things and not others, and it's good to try to figure that out and work with it rather than against it. So what other tech tools are we using? So that was just a very like on direct messages. The main tool that I'm using for NeuroStudio, and I'm setting this up right from the beginning, is actually Circle. So Circle, which I saw a few of you putting in the poll as something that they're using for their tech stack, is a community tool that's probably it's probably close to 2 years old now. I think when we started looking at it, it was a year old. And just in the last maybe 8 or 9 months, they've taken on a huge funding round of like 25 million. So they've gone from being this, as I said before, like a really smartly run startup, lean startup, to actually having some funding and really scaling up what they're doing, which I really love. So, but the difficulty with using something like Circle is that you're asking people to sign up to a new platform. So you have to have a value proposition that makes it worth their while to sign up for a new platform, to be away from things like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, which, I absolutely use as well. And we at Hex use as well as kind of our marketing funnel to then move the community to the site where we want it.
Yeah, no, it's such an interesting point, and that specific example actually speaks to Cheryl's question here, which is, do you choose the community building tools where the community lives, or do you invite them to you? And this is, definitely a key challenge and question a lot of community builders come up against. And it really depends on actually asking yourself, like, what are the features and the necessities that you need in a tool? Like, can it actually functionally do what you need it to do? Because say if everyone lives in Facebook, but Facebook groups aren't great for moderating or perhaps like searching content or dealing with like large scale, big thousands and thousands of members, it could actually be a downfall going to where they are. But, Cheryl, it's definitely worth thinking about, how do you build a strategy to build habits to ensure that people come to the tools that you are using? And, Elle, do you have anything to add on that, of just that differentiation of like, oh, do you go where they are, or do you bring them to you?
I think it's a really, it's something that you have to decide for your own scenario. I went to a session last year from a group called Spark Toro. I think they're in the States. And they're a digital marketing agency. And they were talking about the move away from big socials for marketing because of the control that you lose in relying on the big platforms for all of your basically for the survival of your business. Because obviously using the big platforms has the benefit of that being where people are, but they're also extremely crowded in terms of the content that's already on there. And then they'll just change their algorithm on a whim, and you'll be like, oh, this whole process that I've got in place for how I'm running things no longer works, or no longer hits the mark, no longer gets engagement. So one of the suggestions there was to use the big platforms for being where people are, but as soon as you can, whether it's just having something as simple as an email list with a newsletter, or going for something that's more all-encompassing like Circle, trying to have your community be set up in an environment where there's reason for them to engage with it. That's fundamental, so that it's not just crickets. But also that you get to have more say in how it's actually unfolding. So it's a balancing act. That's the short answer.
Go to where they are and then take them and bring them to you.
Yeah, if you can.
Of course. No, I totally hear that, Elle. And I'm curious if you could list off, just your top 5 tools that actually help you to be more productive and more efficient in your role. Do you have any that really come to mind?
Yeah, definitely. I am also a massive fan of Airtable. I particularly like I particularly like tech tools that integrate with each other. So I know I saw some people put Zapier on there. I do like Zapier, but I like even more tech tools that don't need Zapier because at scale Zapier costs money as well. And so, for example, if you have a great use for, say, surveys or things like that, and you use Typeform. Typeform has so many different integrations that are native to it. Like you can use Typeform and HubSpot and Slack and Airtable, and they all integrate with each other beautifully in the back end. And then you can, like, if you're using Circle, for example, you can embed all of those things within it as well in order to have like your shop front. So it's not necessarily that those tools are the best, but I love the way they play with each other.
100%. And I'm a big fan of Asana for managing like all of the different projects of building community as well. All right, we've got about 5 or so minutes before we jump into some audience Q&A. And, I'd love to understand, like, what kind of steps can people take to actually choose the correct tech tools and platforms for their community?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I am someone who, this might be a little counterintuitive, but I'm someone who likes to have a really strong sense of my overall strategy, but then operate on minimum viable information. So for making decisions. So I put a lot of effort into knowing my biases and learning about what should be going into the decision-making process, and then making decisions on, not requiring too much information, being quite intuitive about it. Because ultimately you can research these things to the nth degree, and you'll still find that there are things that you didn't know are going to be like just you're pulling your hair out over, and things that maybe are amazing that you had no idea from the sales process. I've spent a lot of time with salespeople in my life, and I really, really think that their skills are undervalued. But I'm also very wary of being sold on something and then it just not being the real world experience of it. So I make my decisions based on some fundamental building blocks. So what are the absolute must-haves for my particular purpose? What are my nice-to-haves? Yeah, that's great, but I think they can be a bit distracting. What are the must-haves? What does it feel like to use? And then if I can actually talk to some of the people involved in the actual product, obviously that depends on the size of the product, but if you're working with smaller scale startup kind of or scale ups, you can usually reach out to them on LinkedIn and start a conversation, particularly as community builders. And if you like interacting with them, like if they seem like they've got their heads screwed on in terms of what they're going to do with the product, that matters a lot to me. I want to be working with people who are going to understand what it is that I'm trying to do, or help me do what I'm trying to do, rather than thinking that a whole lot of features are what it's all about, because there will inevitably be features that are missing or that don't work really, really well.
It's so true. And I think it's really important to actually understand the type of support you would get from a specific tool or platform, depending on how you'd like to use it. Obviously, if you're using like Todoist lists, maybe you don't need that much support for a setup. But say if you're using, you're getting like a really big member portal, like Hivebright, Luma, Circle, MemberStack, like these are ones that require a lot of effort. You've got to put a lot of content, you build out the whole email marketing flows. So actually meeting someone from their team and understanding the level of support that you would get from them is really, really important. I actually met the founders of Storytail, which are for online events. It's like a Zoom alternative for like big webinars, and they are like in beta testing at the moment. But if you get a demo with Storytail, they'll actually let you use their beta version of the product for free at the moment, just for them to learn. But I met the founders, and they're based in Leongatha in regional Victoria, and it's really cool to actually support like Australian tech tools as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we also met the founders of Storytel recently, and again, they're great to sit down with and have a conversation. And like anybody who's building these tech tools, like they're working off information from their own heads and their own teams, and like people who are open to collaboration or feedback from outside, like that to me is a really good positive indication that business is going to go somewhere that I like.
100%. We'll have to share this video with Storytel after this. All right.
We're not being paid anything by them.
Yeah, exactly. No, we're just two community builders having a good conversation. All right, what about like things to avoid? You know, there are a lot of like worst case scenarios. There's a lot of roadblocks people can come up against. You know, what are some of the things community builders should avoid when implementing tech tools into the community?
Okay, I'm going to say two things, and I think one of them is going to be really obvious, and the other one is probably going to be pretty counterintuitive. The first one is, as soon as you can, get Google Analytics or whatever level of analytics that you can in place in order to be able to read as many different metrics as you can. Because the second thing that I'm going to say is that actually onboarding people, getting people to sign up, getting engagement is way harder than you ever think it's going to be. And it's as much an art form as a science. So if you can actually, on the one hand, if you've got lots and lots of metrics, then you can kind of look at them to paint a picture of how things are actually going. Because, for example, if you've just got likes, you know, a lot of the time people are going to see something and they might actually like it. They might actually engage with it. It might actually impact them. They might actually, you know, decide to do something with you down the minutes at a point, but they don't click like, and you don't know that has happened. So if you're only relying on metrics and you only have a very small number of metrics, you're going to have a really like inaccurate idea about how things are actually going. You might get disheartened. Conversely, you might chase things that just give you the wrong sorts of, you know, the wrong sorts of numbers. So on the one hand, yes, get as much detail about the metrics as you can, but it's not so that you can like have a competition with yourself about how many people you onboard or whatever it is. It's actually so that you can paint a picture of what's happening and what the culture is in your community and how much value you're actually offering to people.
100%. That's such a good point, Elle. And I think another thing that's good to avoid is also, you know, having a good think about what tools you need, but then being really strategic about them. So if you need a communication tool, pick one and do it really well, as opposed to having a forum and a Facebook group and an email and a Slack and a WhatsApp and diluting the conversation. And then it becomes really confusing for members like, oh, what is the purpose of this tool and why would I go here for communication compared to somewhere else?
Yeah, definitely. And that's definitely something that we have learnt the hard way in recent times at Hex, because, you know, we did, by the nature of experimenting a lot in the beginning of the pandemic, we just tried everything that we could. And I think that was a great idea to start with. But then we had to narrow down, we had to simplify. And as you say, because no tool is ever going to be perfect, it's a question of picking something based on what you think is going to have the main building blocks. And then, as you say, get really good at it. Get really good at it and see, it's almost like the same as you do with when you're like writing something or editing something, or like you do a video that you post on TikTok. Like you're going to start with way more than you actually end up putting in the final product. You want to actually simplify as much as possible.
100%. We're going to have to jump into audience Q&A after this last question. And we've got a couple here. So if you have a question, feel free now to either go in the queue and push number 2 if you have a question and you want to unmute, or feel free to just post them in the chat and I'll ask on your behalf. But Elle, last kind of question from me in this. Oh, which one? Let's talk about automation, because automation can save us a lot of time and help us and remove a lot of workload. So how can community builders like us on the call use automation to help us in our roles?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the obvious answer to that is Zapier, because Zapier just connects so many different platforms. Likewise, Slack, that's one of its superpowers, is automation. There are some things that I love Slack for, and some things that I think it's challenged by, but automation and integration is a real strength. I mean, I come from a real estate background, so we also that's a total CRM business. And I think community building is very much also, CRM needs to be the backbone of what you do, whether that's like literally a CRM like HubSpot, or whether that is a sort of quasi CRM that you build for yourself in Notion or in Airtable. I think Notion actually even has like a template now that you can use for CRM, which means that you can obviously design it exactly how you want. Although I gather that it's a bit of an industry joke that everyone wants to design their own CRM. And in terms of automation, so my advice would be keep it simple. It's too easy to get really carried away with loads and loads and loads of automation, and then you forget where it's going. Unless you are a solutions architect, or someone who really sees the overview. Maybe you're someone you can even just whiteboard it, and do a diagram of how all of your tech and your integrations, your automations are going to work. But absolutely do that, because if you just do it on the fly, which is probably more my typical way of doing things, then you'll end up with a Frankenstein automation system that that's hard for someone else to use. That's probably the main problem. It's if you bring other people into your team, or you need someone else to take over at some point. I mean, obviously automation, the intention is that it's automated, but at some stage someone will have to change something in an email, or they'll have to decide that a different group is needing to be communicated with, or something like that. And if you've got a really complicated automation system, that's going to make it so much harder.
Yeah, it's so spot on. And I think two of my favorite automations is one, automatically taking subscribers and adding them to your email list is the most annoying manual process. So that is great. And another automation is any kind of post event follow up from a Calendly booking that just has all the links. So you make sure everyone has something like that. But definitely remember to make your automations evergreen. So instead of being thanks for making it really specific and signing off as your name, it's great to make them evergreen and signing off as the team and the business, so they are long-standing and last the test of time.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's an interesting one, because so for events, we've used a lot of we've done a lot of stuff on Humanitix and Eventbrite and things like that, and how intuitive those platforms are makes a huge difference to how your automated comms over time end up being. So as you say, if you're always really careful about making everything general, then you're not going to go wrong, most likely, but then it can also not feel very personal. But if you use some of those systems, some of them are easier than others, and the more streamlined they are, the less likely you are to have some automated comms go out that are a disconnect rather than a connect.
Yeah. I think that's a great note to end on and enter into our audience Q&A. So thanks for that, Elle. We've got lots of questions here. So we've got a question here about success and measuring what's working from Cheryl. So the question is, how do you measure what's working in the context of using tools and platforms?
That's a really good question. I mean, I am, and this is probably just a personality trait thing, and maybe it's why I'm a community builder first rather than a like a tech and data analytics person. But I really do think that it's an art form, and again, this comes from a real estate background because it's talking about people, obviously, and so I measure it by the quality of my interactions with people or case studies on how people are actually getting value from the community that they're part of. So, for example, with Hexworld, I mean, we have over 700 people who have signed up, as in like have actually moved to the platform and signed up in maybe 8 months, and that's not from like public signups. That's like people who have asked to join, and sometimes with it, it's not a huge community, but it's a very high quality community. And sometimes when people post, if you're just looking at it, as I say, at the number of likes, then you might go, I want to get more likes. But then occasionally you'll see something like we had a Hexie post something from San Diego where he's doing a blockchain hackathon and was wanting to get feedback on something that he was pitching. And he posted in Hexworld, and then from the 2 responses, one of them was another Hexie on the other side of the world who had really, really relevant feedback, and the other one was from like the CEO of WePloy, who gave him amazing feedback, and he ended up winning the hackathon, and like it was quite a big prize pool and all this sort of stuff. But for me, I look at that and I say, that's like a really high value interaction. You've got someone who has probably never come onto the platform and clicked a button before, but has seen something relevant to them and decided to jump in. And you've got to have a bit of an eye for deciding when you see those things and valuing them as highly as any of the metrics that we've got in place.
And like metrics are really important, but it's also to understand what happens in between the numbers. So I've seen, I've definitely had experience of when you launch great tech tools and then members want to refer other people to join and use them, like that's an indicator.
Yes.
And then on the flip side, I've definitely launched platforms for communities in the past, and there were so many barriers to entry that people started wanting to leave the membership. So like that's like worst case scenario. And things like that's really important to understand, like, okay, well, like what are these barriers? Do we need to move from this tool, or do we just need to improve it and address the issues? So
absolutely. And I see actually, I'm sure that you've got the order of questions that you want to ask there, Paz, but I've just seen in the chat something about, looking at Humanitix as an example, but wondering about the impact of something like the community size on choosing a platform. And it's a really good question. It's a really important question to ask, because that, again, that comes back to how important is that community size for you? Like, are you trying to reach a public that you have no warm connection with already? Is that the way your funnel works? And if that's the case, then yes, the size of the community, the public community really, really matters. But if that's not actually how you're going to be growing or improving, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, then maybe you're getting caught up on something that actually doesn't matter. Anyway. I don't want to jump the queue on the question.
No, jump in whenever you need. You're the star. And so we've got a couple more questions here before we actually have to wrap up in a couple minutes. So we've got a question here from Monique, which is about, you mentioned the downfall of using perhaps like a custom built member portal is actually onboarding and bringing everyone to the new platform. What additional value are you actually offering members to bring people in?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, there are a couple of things that we have thought about in firstly choosing to use Circle as our community platform to begin with. and then in the decisions around, how to continue evolving the tech stack around community, and then thirdly around me choosing to use it for NeuroStudio. And the considerations that I have put into it, whether it's Circle or whether it's using something like Geneva as well as another one that I considered, is and Discord as well, is not just how many people are on it, but what direction does it seem to be going in as far as the number of users or the number of people who are likely to encounter it somehow. So, for example, with both Geneva and Circle, they're both growing. So a little bit like a few years ago, no one was using, no one outside of the tech industry was using Slack, and now lots and lots of companies are using it, which means that, chances are someone has a Slack account, or, they're using multiple workspaces already, they're familiar with the tech. So Circle and Geneva are both growing a little bit like that. Discord is so far, it's definitely growing, but it's traditionally been more of a like gamers community. In recent times, it's been a home for NFT bro communities. So again, just knowing your audience and where they are is really important. But in terms of the value to add to bring people to a new platform, I think knowing why it is that why and how they want to connect is really important. So, for example, if they're wanting to just have incidental contact with your community, then you might be better off looking at just the big socials platforms, depending on how well you think you can cut through the noise. One of the things I like about what you're doing, Paz, and also one of the reasons why I'm choosing to use Circle is because there's still a lot to be said for regular high quality email communication, and it's not where you're looking for an immediate response to things. It's where you're looking to give people information that for whatever reason they want from you. And you've got to be really clear with your communication, and then so it's not necessarily about people coming to the platform unless they have something that they want to post. So engaging with the community is less about direct contact and more about like, I have something to share and this is my notice board, if that makes sense. So yeah, knowing the purpose of what you're doing is, that's a really difficult thing to pinpoint, is what is your value. It's not just about like offers, for example.
And being really conscious and consistent in how you communicate, and like, really respecting people's inboxes and time, and how you go about that. And
yeah,
I think, well, we could dive into so much more, and I know there's a lot of other questions here in the chat, but we're actually going to have to wrap it there. No worries, Cheryl. Thanks for joining us. And Elle, just quickly, last note: if people wanted to connect with you, how could they reach out and get in contact?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd say probably well, there are a few ways. LinkedIn is probably my major social that I'm on, except they have been like spamming people a little bit in recent times. So it's in terms of getting in contact quickly, I am always doing my best, but sometimes it takes me a little longer to see the notifications. Otherwise, I would love for you to join NeuroStudio if you are an ally or a neurodivergent adult or an experienced designer, or even just keen to know more about how we might improve outcomes for neurodivergent people and businesses and learning providers all together in a conversation. And they're probably the best ways to get in touch with me at the moment. And yeah, I would absolutely welcome the conversation. Otherwise, through you, of course.
Of course. Oh, well, Elle, thank you so much for this awesome conversation. Yeah, and just a huge round of applause on behalf of everyone here. We really appreciate you being here and being able to, take time out of your day to just educate us. And so now I'm going to just wrap up with a few CC announcements and a few special gifts. And yeah, as Elle said, please connect with her. Go support her new community as well, Neuro Studio, and share it with someone that might value and gain and benefit from it. And as well, now to wrap up. So we believe at the Community Collective that feedback is actually a gift in itself. And so I would love for everyone to actually click the link in the chat there. It's an Airtable link. It's a tech tool that we use for our data capture. And this actually tells us what you thought of the meetup and how we're tracking and whether, we've done a good job for a session like this. So take a couple minutes, just bookmark the link and do that for us. And that would be incredible. And then we actually have a gift for you. So we believe in the, the two-way street of gift giving. And we've actually been speaking to Butter about whether other people in our community would like to use this tool for virtual events. So we've got a 30% off for the first 3 months to run online interactive events. So you can grab all the details in the chat. We also have tickets for the CMX Summit. This is the world's largest conference for community building. I know it's in San Francisco, so I know it's a huge ask for anyone to go. But if you would like to jump on a plane and go to San Francisco, we've got 50% off in-person tickets to give to everyone. And I actually have one full free ticket to the conference left. So if you would like to attend, please just shoot me a message and I'll let you know how to redeem that. And the last couple of things from me is it's been a really exciting week at the Community Collective because we've actually launched our community cohort, and applications actually close on Thursday at 12 o'clock. And so where the community cohort came from is really this need to support community builders like yourselves to build stronger communities. And whilst we provide this free meetup once a month for an hour for everyone to join and learn, we want to do more. So the cohort is our more. And really, this is a 7-week experience to connect and level up together with other community builders. We've brought experts in from all around the world, from Africa, Europe, America, Australia, and New Zealand, to share their knowledge with you about building community. And it's 100% online with in-person sessions around major cities in Australia and New Zealand. So if you're not really sure if this is for you, just pop your name down in the application because we book in a call with you to chat more about it. And as well, if you know anyone else that could benefit from this who's building community, you can let them know. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to stay on the call, we are going to go into one-on-one conversations. But if you do have to duck off to the rest of your day, you are welcome and free to head off. So thank you so much for joining us. And if you're heading off, it's been amazing.
Thanks so much for coming, anyone who's got to jump off. I reckon I would love to say hello to a few people if anyone's hanging around. And thank you so much, Paz. That was so much fun. Also, I just wanted to say as well that in our conversations that we've had about the cohort that you're building, it sounds so amazing. And I am, definitely keen to have one of those chats with you about doing that course. It really, really, really does sound wonderful.
Oh, that means the world to me. Thank you so much, Elle. Well,